Hello and welcome to Wait, I Am Black, a podcast about the moments when race stops being abstract and starts to matter. My name is Michael, and today I am joined by Wellington Makala. Wellington, thank you very much for being here with me and agreeing to have this conversation today.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for the invitation. I've been waiting all week. I think since we started to talk about this, really excited to be here. And I have to say thank you even for the platform and how we connected. And I think that's how the world has become so small now that actually we can connect on different parts. So really excited to have this conversation. My name is Wellington Makala. I'm Chief Nurse for Northeast London Foundation Trust, Zimbabwean by birth, British by citizenship.
Yep, absolutely. Welcome to the podcast, Wellington. And you touched on how we got in touch. I think it's worth mentioning that my wife, Blessing, is connected to you on LinkedIn, and she saw your post. Which, I mean, if I give an assignment to anyone and everyone to just go and write the closest stories to why I started this podcast, yours will come top. And she saw your post on LinkedIn and she forwarded it to me. Like, wait, that is the story that this podcast is about. I got to get in touch with Wellington, and I did. And you so graciously said yes.
No. I think honestly, I think when you reached out, I think I then checked what you are doing and what you've been doing, and you've been doing some amazing work. And I think the fact that actually you are not trying to do politics, you're not trying to do politic stuff, you're trying to have conversations. And I think that's really what I am about. That actually it becomes about real conversation, real people, the authentic self. And actually how the importance of that, I think I think that's what was really appealing. I think when we reached out, and actually it just became, our stories are connected. What you're trying to do, what you're trying to do is connected.
Yeah.
And your wife is connected us. So we have to say thank you to Blessing for getting us here. And without you, we would not have connected. So thank you for that.
Lovely to hear that. All right, you've already said a little about, well, you said your name and the work that you do, but do you want to say more about who you are? Who is Wellington?
So I sometimes I ask myself that question, and I was laughing, and I think sometimes we think we know somebody. And I think I was speaking to my wife the other day, and we were talking about some people who have been married for 40 years, for example. And then the person said, actually, you know what? I'm still getting to know my husband after 40 years of marriage. So I am Wellington Makala, a black man. As you see me, I think sometimes people get confused. They think Makala is my first name and Wellington is my surname. So sometimes they think they're going to see a white man coming through, and when they see this black man coming through, I don't know whether they get excited or they get disappointed. That's for them to make a decision. But I am a proud black man. I'm a proud Zimbabwean. I'm a proud African.
Yep.
I'm a proud father. I've got two beautiful daughters and my husband to my beautiful wife. I'm a son to my three mothers, because I've got three mothers. And it's not really everyone who's got three mothers. I've got the
Wow.
mother who gave birth to me. I've got my mother who gave birth to my wife. I've got a mother, my spiritual father, who adopted me when I got here. Because I think when I got to this country,
Wow.
the Shumoloa family just adopted me. They are my
Oh,
father
wow,
and
okay.
my mother. And it's just so beautiful that actually I can go to three houses,
Ah,
and I've got a room. So I've got a
oh,
room
wow.
of my own in my father's house and my mother's house in Nigeria. I've got the same in my biological family. When I go to my mother and my dad from my wife's side,
Oh,
I've got a
wow.
room there. So I am that person. I'm a person who has had an opportunity to belong in different spaces. So I then come into that space where I become what the situation wants me to be. If I am in front of my spiritual parents, I am that spiritual son. In front of my mother, I am that biological son.
Yeah.
In front of my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, who are my fathers, and my mother again, I am a son. In front of my wife, I have to be the husband. But actually, sometimes I forget actually when I'm at work, then I have to be a chief nurse. And actually people then actually have to come and at home when people call me, they ask how I'm doing and they are a bit relaxed. At work, when someone is calling me, it's because something has gone wrong. So I'm
Yeah.
worried about this is whatever it is. So it's being able to be the real person, but actually I also try the other part of me is actually I try to be the same person. So the same person you find at home, the same person.
Consistency.
I was
Yeah.
born. Yeah, so I was born on a farm. I think I told my story. I think
And
online.
we'll definitely talk more about, we'll come specifically to talk about that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
No,
but
thank you.
that's just a piece of me, which
Yeah,
I kind of really sharing who I am and how I got here. Thank you.
that's really interesting. A very interesting take to the different roles as well, and how sometimes I'm sure they come into each other.
I do.
Yeah. Did you say your parents live in Nigeria?
Yeah, so I've got my spiritual parents. So was Pastor and Pastor Emisi Ashimolo, they are Nigerian. So I've
No, I know
been
they're Nigerians, but do they live in Nigeria now? I thought they live over here.
no, they live here, but they do go to
Oh, okay.
Nigeria and
All
back.
right.
So they kind of go going back. I apart from the country I was born in Zimbabwe, I've been to Nigeria more than Nigerians.
Ah,
So
that's interesting.
so it's one of my accomplishments in life. So from
Wow.
2010, apart from COVID, I've been going to Nigeria every single year.
Oh, wow. That is interesting. Even I haven't been to Nigeria every single year.
You see, I
Well,
was
in
in
fact,
Nigeria
since
last
since
year.
2010, I've been to Nigeria twice.
I, I was in Port Harcourt last year. I
Oh,
was in
wow.
Ibadan the year before that. I was in
Ibadan.
Ikorodu the year
Wow.
before that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I can see it. Yeah, yeah, that is true. Another thing I want to ask you is, what is the story behind? You say a lot of people hear your name and think they're gonna see a white person, then they see you. What's the story behind the name Wellington? Because it's not a common name, obviously, for a black person and African person.
It's so funny because I think I had to then look back. So I think when I was born in 1976. At the time I was born, because I had to work out how my mother ended up calling me Wellington. And at that particular time, there was this guy who used to read the news in Zimbabwe, who was called
Okay.
Wellington Bofana. So he was a very
Okay.
popular news reader. And I think that's why my mom just picked up this name. And my
Oh,
mom just said she
nice.
liked the name. Yeah, because normally in Zimbabwe, people give names which are maybe like, your dad might have that name, your
Yeah.
uncle might have that name. There's nobody in our whole family that was called Wellington. She said she just loved the name. So, and it was so funny that actually when I then got here, when people read my name, they automatically think that Wellington is my second name. They think that it's
Mm,
my surname. So actually they
yeah.
think that I'm Makala Wellington.
Yeah, 'cause
And
that
because
would
the
make
number,
more sense actually. Yeah,
yeah,
more,
yeah.
yeah,
I think I need
logical
to speak to
from
my
the way
mom.
we.
I might
Yeah.
have to change. I might have to change things around.
Oh god, that is interesting. Wow. Okay. That's really interesting. Now let's go into a conversation about before race started to matter for you. But first, we'll just talk about. Let's try and understand how you grew up, where and how you grew up. What was that
Yeah.
like for you?
I was born into a space of belonging. So I was born in 1976. My mother was, I think, about 19 years at that time. So my mother is the last born of a family of seven.
Mm.
And it was, as she says, it was a child having a child. So she was the last born. She's going to be younger in the family. She's given birth to this young boy. So my grandmother delivered me.
Oh
So
wow.
it might be just really the case that you get them delivered by my grandmom, because actually when you're maybe like 19, because people get married a bit early,
Mm.
back home, you probably not even know that you're Jew. So actually maybe the baby comes, my grandmother delivered me. I've never seen the certificate of my grandmom being a midwife until she passed
Oh,
away. I never saw them, but
of
she delivered
course.
me. But
Yeah.
I was born into a space of belonging. Actually, born on a farm, grew up on a farm. And actually everything was just really was there for me. I could
Mm.
say this is what I want, whatever it is. And my identity was built in my family. My identity was built in my totem. My identity was built in the legacy of our family. So that's what
Mm.
I identified with. I then I think went into live in the capital city. And again, even when I lived in the capital city, I didn't see race. I didn't see color. I didn't see anything. I knew who I was. and it was very clear about who I was. And I think even when I come across a white person, actually it didn't really faze me because like I just
Mm.
knew who I was and actually I knew who they were. The identity was always about the person. And
Mm.
the difference, I think, when I was growing up was probably more about gender. So it was more about
Wow.
actually they are male, they are female. And that was probably the main difference, which I think we grew up knowing. And
Yeah.
actually, there was also another massive difference was actually the rich and the poor. So
Oh
actually,
yes.
you knew whether you
The
were poor, and
universal difference. Yep.
and you also know the rich people how they
Yeah.
look like. And I think that's really maybe one some of that. And I think what so happened, I think most of the rich people in Zimbabwe at that particular time were white. So actually, then
Uh.
the richness was now associated with white.
Mm.
So in Zimbabwe, if you are rich, like even like now people call you Murungu, but Murungu means white. So even a
I
black
see.
person who's rich
Is a
was also called
Murungu.
Murungu.
Ah, that's really interesting. Wow, wow, wow.
But when what you are really saying, you are now attributing richness to
So
whiteness.
really, it has transcended
Yeah,
whiteness. That
yeah,
whiteness has transcended. Rich, being wealthy has transcended whiteness. It
yes.
has become. It was defined by whiteness, but it has transcended it. Basically.
It has come into that space. So my mother, like because I provide for my mother, I provide for my parents. My mother will say, "You are my Murungu,"
Oh
but
wow.
actually,
Technically, my white wealthy person.
yeah,
Oh wow.
it's those things. So why am I saying this? Is because back home, color is not is accepted. Color is
Mm.
easier, and
Yeah.
color cuts across colors. So
Mm.
actually, it's not really about actually just being the white skin. Actually, it was actually what it means and what it provides and all that part. But like what you were asking, the first time I realized I was
Well,
black.
well, let's slow down a little bit because we'll come to that.
You want
Uh,
to we want to unpick more.
I want to unpick more about this growing up in Zimbabwe and experiencing the Morungos. And am I saying that correctly?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. Experiencing the Morungos and realizing that it's white people, but you're not focused on their whiteness. You're focusing on their
yes,
wealth.
yes,
So that's really interesting because there were majority of them were white people, the wealthy people,
yes,
and you use that Morongo term to define them. But yet, in the psyche of the average Zimbabwean, it's about the wealth, not about the
yes,
race.
yes.
So how did you rationalize, or how does that work exactly? How do you make that divide? How do you separate? I'm not asking you to speak for the whole of Zimbabwe, but how do
Yeah.
you reckon that separation was made from the whiteness, the separation of the whiteness from the wealth, so much so that anyone who is wealthy now can validly be a Marungu?
Yeah, and I think I need to put a disclaimer out there. And I think I can't speak for the rest
Mm-mm.
of Zimbabwe. I can't speak for every Shona person in Zimbabwe.
Yeah,
I think I always laugh and say I can't even speak for my family because I know like I've got like a 13-year-old turning 14 or the 14 months old and I've got my wife. If I speak for my 13-year-old, she'll be like, no, Dad, that's not it. I speak for
yeah,
the other one. So actually we can never speak for anybody. But actually I can only tell my story. I can
yeah,
only tell what it meant for me.
yeah.
I
Good.
think growing up, I think I didn't get caught up into the issue around race. I got caught up into the issue about provision, and actually most people, even at one time when we did a bit well, I think as a family we had someone who was helping to look after the house and all that stuff, and even those people who were working for my mom and my parents, they used to call my parents Murungu. So
Okay,
because for them, she was the person who was giving them a job.
I
So
see.
really, because the whole culture of Zimbabwe, when we move into that industrial space, most of the companies were owned by white people. So when black people then started also taking over farms and having companies and all that stuff,
Mm.
we had grown up knowing that actually for you to get a job, you're going to work for a Murungu. You're going to
Mm.
work a company which is owned by a white person. But
Yeah.
then it got to a place actually the people were now saying, so what we call this person who looks like me who's got nothing to do with color, but actually they've got more money than I am. So actually they are still in that space. So actually I grew up without being caught up into the skin, but I probably grew up being caught up a lot more in understanding wealth and
Yeah.
understanding people who don't have,
The
and understanding,
distribution.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the distribution of wealth, or
Yeah.
wealth, which is why I think in everything we then do, you're always then pushing to get to a place where you can also become Murungu. Not that you're wanting to change your skin, but you want to be able to provide. You want
I
to be able
find
to, yeah,
that really, really interesting, and that speaks to the extent to which race was not color of the skin was not a thing for you, and for many people in Zimbabwe, many people in Africa. I know that many people in Nigeria. For me, when I was in Nigeria, the fact that even when you have such a stark difference, that you still hinge it on something other than color,
yeah,
because it just doesn't make sense. It just didn't, I mean, imagine, make sense to hinge it on color.
yeah,
Because it's so intangible, it's so inconsequential, it's so nothing, it's so abstract. So you hinge it on something that's real, and that what is real is
yeah.
wealth.
Yeah, because you can see wealth, but also for me, you could see the results of wealth.
Yeah,
You could see how it makes a difference. But if I
yeah,
couldn't see the results of someone being black and someone being white, what difference
exactly.
does it make? It was no
No.
different. But like someone who can provide for their family, someone who can give employment, someone who can give someone a salary. Because actually, technically, really,
Wow.
my people, when my parents were going to work, they get their salary at the end of the month. Murungu provides for them. That's their Murungu. That's the person who's providing for them. But it's not because that person is white or is black or is female or is male. It's because they are in a place where they can employ you, where they can provide for you. And so, in the funny part, Michael, is actually it got to a place where the children becomes the Murungu for their parents.
Yeah. Yeah, I get
My
that.
grandmother used to will be there saying like Murungu wangu, because like that's my provider. Technically,
Yeah.
that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
They're not saying that's my white person or that's my black person. They're talking about provision.
Oh wow, this is powerful. I must say, honestly, it is a powerful way to look at the abstractness of race. It really, really is. If anybody's thinking, what, how can the abstractness and the non-issue of race can best be, you know, embodied, I feel like this is it. So yeah, no, thank you very much for that. Wow. So around that time, around about that time, as far as you were concerned, what were the factors for success?
Yeah, I think because I then got into this person where wealth was the main definer of actually
Mm,
where I am and actually how I was growing, rather than the color of my skin.
mm,
What it did, it took a lot of shackles off. What it definitely started to say to me, you know what, you can become who you want to be. Because when you become who you want to be, and if you start providing for your family, you start providing for your parents, you start making an impact in your community, then you are a Murungu to the
mm,
people. So actually, you're in this space actually where you want to be in that space. So it then actually probably took me into a different journey
mm.
around being able to define myself, to be able to focus, but wanting mainly not about me, but wanting to do more for the population, for the people I was serving. So
Wow.
actually wanting to make that impact, because you can only be a Murungu counted in that space if you are making impact more than just your family. You are making
Yeah,
impact to the bigger population.
absolutely.
And that's what I wanted. I always wanted to do, to be able to
Wow.
make a difference.
Now that's great. In that period, right? Again, I'm talking about before you realize that blackness was more than just the color of your skin, right? In that period, was there any consciousness at all of race for you, apart from just skin color? Any at all?
No, no, no. There wasn't any consciousness. Like one of my one of the he's a politician, but I respect him so much. He's a Zimbabwean guy, and he taught me something which I've grown up with.
Mm,
He always said there is nothing else you can do apart from being in the books. I've got so many books. He said all the answers you're looking for, they're in the book somewhere.
Mm.
There's a book somewhere which can give you that part. So
Mm.
during that time, Michael, honestly, the driver was education. So in
Yeah.
Zimbabwe, education was a big factor.
Yeah.
And that was we then believe education can unlock any door.
You can
And
unlock
actually,
those.
and when we're
Absolutely.
going to when you're going to university, you're
Yeah.
going to schools. If you have got enough money, you are in the
Mm.
same school, which has got different people from different backgrounds, from
Yeah.
different race. But actually, there was never a day when I was growing up in Zimbabwe where I woke up and thought, "Oh my God, I'm a black person," and actually, "Oh my God, that person is a white person." Actually, I would wake up and say, "Oh my God, we are really poor. Oh my God, those people are really rich." because that was it. I would look around, I'm like, my God, we are walking to school, and this one is being dropped by their
Yeah.
parents and being picked up at school. We are having bread, which we took from home, food from like yesterday to take to
Yeah.
school, and someone is got a card to be able to buy lunch and whatever it is. That was the part. And actually, so the motivator around education was I want to be able to provide for my own family. I want to be able to also drop my kids at home. I
Yeah.
was at school. I also want to be able to provide for my parents because I know how much they've worked. So that was the driver. But actually, I think the way Zimbabwe was set up
Mm.
helped in a way that you then get to a place where you think that anything is possible. And that's how I grew up. I grew up with
Wow.
that mindset around I can't be, I can't change anything else, but I can change the future through education.
Yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more. And that is something that permeates the whole of Africa. I would say, Nigeria, same thing. You know, back home, the value that our parents attached to education was huge. So okay, so let's go to that moment now. The moment when you realize that wait, I'm black. Let's go
Yeah,
there. Take me there.
Michael, it was breaking news because I then discovered what I didn't even know. Honestly, I can tell you exactly where I was.
Yeah.
That's how different it was. So
Hmm.
I came into this country in 1999.
Okay.
And when you come here, you're told that actually everything is there. You think that actually you're going to have everything you need. The UK, they sell or they tell us when we're in
Mm.
Zimbabwe was very different. So I
Okay.
got here, got used to okay, this is UK. I'm now here,
Mm.
and I wanted to open a bank account,
Okay.
right? So this is the first bank account I'd opened here. I had a bank account in Zimbabwe, which really was just normal account. I can't even remember the forms I filled in
Mm.
Zimbabwe because like, it was just normal for me.
Yeah.
And I went into a bank. It was in Trafalgar Square, Central London. It was a bank there. I don't want to mention the name of the
Yeah.
bank
Yeah.
because they
Good.
want to cause any problem because it was a bank. So it was Trafalgar Square. Went
Yeah.
into this bank. There was this young lady. I think probably she was in the early 20s. She
Okay.
gave me all these forms to complete. And then I think the first thing she asked me when I realized like the things have changed here, she says, "What's your mother's name?"
Okay.
So I said, "My mother's name is Mrs. Makala." He said, No. What's your first name?" Michael, nobody in my whole life had ever asked me my mother's first name. Nobody. Even at
Okay.
school or wherever. We grew up in a space where even though I knew my mother's name, when even my mother sometimes she would test and say, "Do you know my name?" I'm like, "No, mom, I don't know your name. I don't know what your name is.
I'm
Nobody's ever
not.
told
I'm
me."
not taking a bait.
Yeah, I'm not taking the bait. I don't know your name. So honestly, like you were not even allowed to call it. So Michael, I looked around. I almost like panicked. I
Is
looked
your
around.
mother hiding somewhere, waiting for you to say it with a slipper in her hand, waiting for you to say, "Good, I finally
Yeah,
caught you."
yeah. I said like I knew you knew this name. So I was like, I looked around and realized mom wasn't there. And I was like,
Yeah.
just come back. So I
Oh
told
wow.
him my mother's name. And then there was this whole thing about gender.
Mm.
And then there was the whole thing about race. And then there were questions about my gender and the gender I was born with. So actually, there were questions which I was being asked, which I'd never been asked in my life.
Oh wow.
But the one which stayed with me was what race I was. The race actually, and actually I was looking at this like there was white, there was this, there was that, there was black, British, then there was black African. So I'm thinking actually, what is this even the difference about this black British and then the black African and all this part? So I didn't work out, okay, I'm from Africa, so hopefully maybe I'm this black African thing. So I put that part. I walked out of that space and I realized, honestly, for the first time, it just dawned on me. I was walking around Trafalgar Square that actually I was black.
Wow.
And I realized that it mattered to somebody.
It
So
matters
to someone, it mattered that I was
someone.
black. But what I didn't understand was why it mattered.
Why? Exactly.
Why did it matter that I was black? Because for me, I'm opening a bank account. What should matter to them is whether I've got enough money to put in that account.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because that was my head. I thought they'll be asking, how much money are you depositing? I'll say, actually, I don't have any at the moment. I just want to open my account.
I'm just prophesying for the future.
And that is how I'd grown up. I'd grown up where you open an account, it's about how much money you've got, your wealth, how you get valued, how you get services was based on what you can do and what you've got. And for the first time, so I walked out, Michael, I didn't know. Honestly, I was thinking in my head, is there then a section of this bank where the black accounts are and the other accounts are? But I didn't know what this information I've just given. Because I grew up in a space where my mother always said to me, if you can be classified, you can be nullified.
Yeah.
And that has always stayed with me.
Wow.
So if someone can classify you because they put you in this pot, they could decide to just nullify to say, actually, we don't want this pot anymore. So I didn't know that actually, okay, if now I am black, what does that mean? What does that do to me?
What should you expect going forward?
What should I expect? Yeah. Because
so it takes away something from you, that knowledge. It takes away that carefree going into spaces and going into things. Now you have to think, okay, this thing I'm about to do, what does it mean for my being black?
Yes. And it becomes a game changer for life.
Yeah.
And I don't think people understand it enough to the point that, Michael, if I was jumping on a train, it happened one day. One day I was going to, I was in Victoria Station. I needed to get to Stratford. And I got on a wrong train, which was going to Sheffield or something. It didn't stop at Stratford. So actually, when I was on this train, the moment the doors closed, I looked around on this train thing and I realized I was on the wrong train because there was no one on that train who looked like me. And I know if I was going to Stratford, there'll be people who look like me. I was like, there's no way I'm on the right train. So when I looked around, when we passed Stratford, I knew. So there's something about once you start being classified as black, you then start to look around you to look for blackness. So you're looking for blackness wherever you are. And when you can't find blackness, you can't find yourself, you automatically then think you don't belong. Because that's, and it's almost like really, Michael, it's a job. It's a job in our brain where you're working through. You get in a shop, you're looking for what are called the black products, right? You're looking for a place to worship. You're looking what are called black churches, right? So you're in that space of thinking. I even got confused. I remember, just a really confession here. I got confused one time when they said there was Black Friday. I thought actually I was going to get something for free.
It's for black people. Black people's day.
Then I realized what it was about. It was about sales and all this stuff. So I'm just, honestly, I've learned so much in this country. This country has given me so much. But I think on that journey, I think discovering that I was black and the weight which came with it, and actually what it meant in every aspect, and almost there are times where you then actually almost like second guess where you are supposed to be. There are times, Michael, when I would get into a room and people are sitting. There's one meeting I went to, I still remember, I walked into a room, there was about 20 people in that room. As the moment I walk in, the first thing in my head is, where do I sit? And the place I will sit is where I can find someone who looked like me, right? Or that's number one, you look at someone who looked like you. There was 20 people in a room and nobody looked like me. So my second going is someone who smiles at me. So I look around and I think someone who's a bit welcoming. And then nobody's welcoming. So you've got one is gone, two is gone. And then number three, you are just then looking for an empty chair. Right? You're looking, okay.
I'm bracing yourself or whatever.
Bracing yourself. But it says a lot because if you just imagine, if you don't belong into the room when you're just getting to the entrance of the room. You've not even sat down. You're just getting in there. You look around and you say, "Oh, I don't belong here." Why? Because there's somebody who's put this whole thing about rest in your head
Yeah.
that you are. And actually, when you start, Michael, when I sat in that room with these 20 colleagues, they were marvelous colleagues. They accepted me, but actually, I had got to my place in my head that I don't belong here.
Yeah.
And if I say to myself, I don't belong because I am black, it takes longer for me to then actually to warm up into that room, to be
Yeah.
able to engage into that room. But also, I can also easily become a barrier myself
Oh yeah.
because I've closed up because I closed up thinking I'm protecting myself. And the colleagues were in the room were like, "What's wrong with this guy?"
And that's a powerful thing actually. This is not the first time that this is coming up in this podcast, and I'm very sure it won't be the last either, right? Where you are effectively excluding yourself or risking excluding yourself. Not that others have excluded you. No, you've excluded yourself, but you're
Yeah.
excluding yourself has a big meaning to it that most people will think in the first instance. It's not just you're not just excluding yourself because you want to. You're excluding yourself because you have your innocence taken away that has resulted and the way it's impacted you in that it's made you think about things that you shouldn't necessarily not everybody thinks about. It's made you
Yeah.
second guess things that not everybody second guess.
Yeah. No.
Wow.
I totally agree with you. And I think that's why I was saying I think it's important for us to be able to not just educate people who look like me, but also educate people who don't look like me
Yeah.
about, for people who look like me, I say, let's not carry this weight. Let's not carry this weight because actually it becomes a barrier for what we need to do. For people who don't look like me, I would say actually, please also give me a bit of room because when I come, I've got other things I'm carrying. I've got other things which are worrying me. I've got other things which are making me think, am I accepted here? Do I belong here? So actually, even like now, I was speaking to some colleagues at work, like if you look at actually last year or the year before when there was issue about flags and all that stuff, it again unsettles us. It unsettles to say actually a place, which is why in the beginning I said I'm a Zimbabwean by birth
Yeah.
and I'm British by nationality.
Yeah.
And actually when at one time I had to choose whether to be British or Zimbabwean because I couldn't be dual. So actually you had to choose
Ah.
one.
Okay.
So, and actually, you then actually come to that space where you then, honestly, Michael, it took me a year to decide
Oh
what do
wow.
I then lose because I wasn't sure that actually if I lose my Zimbabwean citizenship, actually, what does that mean for who I am? What does that mean for that part? But actually, if I don't embrace the British citizenship, actually, what does it mean for where I am and where I'm raising my
Where you
family and
going?
what does that look like?
Absolutely.
But it's not everyone who has to think about that. But actually, we have not just we have gone a bit extreme for me, Michael. That even the services we're building, some of them, they're built around race.
Yeah.
So actually,
Yeah.
you then the communities we're building are built around race sometimes, and it has become sometimes a divider
Yeah.
of the people. And actually, what do we then do to try to just then actually say, how do I get back to my time when I was born in Zimbabwe, where race wasn't a matter?
Yeah.
Actually, what mattered was who I am and who I'm trying to become.
Absolutely. Wow. So since that day, you walked out of that bank at Trafalgar Square and you walked around the square thinking, okay, what is this blackness, this newfound discovery? What is it going to mean for me going forward? How has race continued to show up for you?
Racists continue to show up every single day. I think there's one thing which doesn't leave me. Uh, in the different why reason, whatever it is, Michael, every single day from that day, I have to remind myself that I'm black. There's something which reminds myself that I'm black. It always shows up. It always comes through something, what I needed to do. And actually, what I worry about sometimes, even for my children, my children's children, is I grew up until I was in my early 20s in a place where I never woke up and thought, I am black person. I woke up and thought, actually, I don't have enough. I'm not as rich as I might want to be. But that drove me to want to do better. So
Yeah.
when I woke up in Zimbabwe, I would say, actually, you know what? I want to be able to provide for my family, to provide for my mother. So it was like an engine, an oil, and an energy which helped me to really want to do better. But actually, the part actually where I wake up and actually I have to remind myself, I'm reminded by something which is happening that actually I'm black. it doesn't help me to try to be better because I'm not trying to change who I am because I am black. So it's almost like what I've lost
Mm.
from coming over the waters is that internal drive of saying, you know what, I am an equal, I am enough. Actually, if I can only do better in this space, if I can only serve better, if I can only be a better father, a better husband, a better colleague at work, actually, I can get where I want to get to.
Mm.
Now I feel that actually I can be all that. But there are some times where race then raises its head and actually there's a block that actually
Mm.
doesn't matter. In NHS, we talk about breaking the glass ceiling for people who look like me.
Mm.
When you get some of these jobs, they say you've broken the glass ceiling. But actually, why should be a glass ceiling?
Yeah.
Why should I be the one? Just imagine the energy I need to put in to break
To
this
break
glass
that
ceiling.
ceiling. Yeah.
Why is it my job to break a ceiling, which is glass, in order to go? Why should not the system break this? If the system knows that there's a glass ceiling, is it
Just
not
break it.
supposed the system's job to break this glass ceiling for all of us so that nobody has to struggle with it? So my journey has always been breaking this ceiling. My journey has always been from that time that you are then, when you break, you become the first. You become the first of this, the first
Yeah.
of that, the first of that. And actually, in my organization, I think I became the first black exec.
Mm.
In NHS history, I became the first male black African to be a chief nurse in the history of NHS. So you become
Wow.
the first. So you are then on this. But I don't like the general first.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you're breaking the ceiling. You're certainly putting cracks on that glass ceiling. Clearly, made different people within the context of race that are achieving in spite of the limitation that has been created artificially through race. But it's taken a lot out of you. It's
It
taken
does.
a lot out of us. I imagine that is what you're talking about. Yeah. How would you put that into words? What it takes? That I've spoken to a lot of people where they just say it's exhausting.
It is. It's for me. I'll use the words my friend normally use. I've got one of my best friends called Yvonne Koge, which has done a lot of work around rest, and she calls it weathering.
Hmm.
She says it's like really you've got these stairs outside where the rain is hitting these stairs every year in, year out. Nobody goes there to clean it up, to look after it. After a while, after a year, 2 years, whatever it is, you start to see some weathering. Because at
Hmm.
one time is water, the next minute is a snow, the next minute is the
Hmm.
heat.
The
So
elements.
so
Yeah.
so if, so you continue because if no one is actually then helping, you then
Hmm.
actually have got this weathering effect.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it feels like sometimes. That actually, like people use these words, Michael, which they think that they are being helpful.
Hmm.
My parents did the same. My parents said, "You're going to UK now. For you to succeed there, you have to be twice as better. You have to
Yeah.
put twice effort as other people."
Hmm.
When I came, that drove me.
Hmm.
The twice as much drove me. So actually,
Hmm.
I would have to say, okay, if this person is working and doing this, I need to do twice as they are doing.
Hmm.
So I'll push myself and do twice. But actually, just imagine, I'm creating another 24 hours in the
Hmm.
same 24 hours.
Yeah.
How can that be sustainable? So you
Uh,
can't sustain this whole thing that actually and that's not for you to be in front. That's for you to just break even.
hmm
For you to just break even, you have to be twice as better. So you are then, it pushes you around education. I know some of my friends who have got a PhD
hmm
and they're band 5 in NHS. So they've done this degree, that degree, they've done a PhD, they're called a doctor and they're band 5.
hmm
And I know some colleagues who don't look like me who have got no degree and they're execs. So you start to think. So even when you look at actually maybe some of those barriers. I was talking to a friend last week and we're looking at actually maybe the staff survey in NHS which had just come out,
Yeah.
which says for a black person like me, you are 27 times most unlikely to move from a band 7 to a band 9. compared
Wow.
to someone who's white. So the white person who's a band 5 today is 27 times more likely to be a band 9. 27 times. So in my head, I was thinking that means where someone is doing one application, Michael, I have to do 27 of them in order to just really to follow that journey to break
Yeah.
even. But how can that be right? Just for me to move from a band 5 to a band 9, you're saying actually for me to start as a nurse and to become a director. Actually, I've got like, no, someone has got 27 more chances for that than I've got. So that's what I'm saying. Like this leaves. So even when it doesn't affect me directly, when I hear some of those stories about what it feels for someone like me, when I hear stories about how some of the internationally educated colleagues who have come into this country are being treated, when I hear stories about how some of the children who have got my background are being treated, it then just always raises its head. Race always raises its head. And you're then trying to always do better. You're always then trying to be there and support and all that stuff. That's why I'm saying actually it has never left.
Yeah.
Race has not left me from 1999. The fact that I'm a black person has not left me. Even when I
Wow.
became British, that didn't change it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting because when you were in Zimbabwe, becoming someone who provides and has affordability will immediately trump anything else, any race or anything like that. There are certain things that are certain privileges that equally can lift you up or expectedly should lift you up. One of them would be the British citizenship, right? It's a privilege to hold a British citizenship, and it has some perks to it. So the fact that you attain that and it didn't lift you up above your racialization speaks a volume in itself. So listen, you again, I'll go back to that
But
moment of your realization that you're black. Did you think that you needed to adjust yourself in any way to accommodate that new finding? Did you think, okay, I would need to do things differently? I need to change myself a bit. Sometimes we do that when we try to mold ourselves into what will less make race have a negative impact on us.
yeah, no, I did. And there are some colleagues who felt they were being helpful by telling me what I needed to change after my discovery. And I'm actually talking to some colleagues who were telling me not long ago. You see, when I talk, I express myself. That's how I've grown up. I use my hands a lot
Yeah,
because
yeah,
like
those gesticulations. Yeah,
that's an expression. That's
yeah.
actually it helps me to land what I'm trying to do. And I think there was the part around. So if I got back home today and I'm speaking to my mother
Yeah,
and she's looking at me, or even if she was here, I don't look her in the eye. I look
yeah, of
down,
course.
and
Yeah,
that's a sign of respect.
that's a sign of
And
respect. Yeah,
then when I got I got here and I'm told that actually, you know what, Wellington, if you're not giving eye contact, that means you're a bit dodgy, you're a bit
yeah,
shifty,
and certainly
you're hiding
disrespectful.
something from me. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're being disrespectful because actually I'm looking at you, you're looking down. But and then actually there was also the part around anyone who's older than me. I call them back home is your uncle, your father, your mother, and all that stuff. So that's kind of anyone who's older. But actually, then coming here, you then get a place actually where when I was trying to call people who were a bit older than me, calling them Mr. So and so, the person said, no, don't call me Mr. Jones. I am Peter. I'm like, but it was so difficult for me to call that person Peter because this person is a bit older than me. I'm doing it from that space of respect. So it's been that part around working through, and some of the stuff I took them on. So I went to an interview. Just gives a short story. I went to an interview, and they said they were giving me feedback. They said actually you've done really well in this interview.
Okay.
You've given the right answers, but there's something which you are not sure about you. So I'm thinking, okay, they had not made a decision whether to give me a job. They gave me the job in the end when they understood who I was.
Okay.
They said, we just want to understand you. When you talk, you use your hands a lot. I said, yes, I do. It's just an expression. I'm not being aggressive. I'm not trying to fight anybody. Just really an expression. They said, okay. Then they said, but you speak too fast. I said, when I speak too fast, it's because I'm just passionate about something.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just a normal thing.
yeah.
They're like, oh, okay. They said, okay, if I can give you some advice, you might need to get some training to speak slowly. I said, okay. They said, actually, maybe, the next time you go to the interview, you might want to sit on your hands. So you put your hands underneath you and you sit and you sit on your hands.
Wow,
Michael,
that is really
telling you.
strange
I'm telling you,
advice.
someone was trying to help me. And I tried to take it on. So I
Did you
went
actually
to
go on an interview and sit on your hands?
I went to
Literally,
one.
sitting on your
Literally,
hands, literally.
I went to an interview. I think it was a couple of years after that. Because I got that
Yeah.
job, and then actually I thought, oh, those hands
Yeah,
are a
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
So I sat on them. Michael, I don't even know how they came out. After like 2 minutes, the hands were everywhere. And then there was one of my chief execs. I think he helped me. He appointed me as the chief nurse, but he liberated me, and he
Oh,
said, "Don't try to be anybody else."
that's
He
it.
said, the reason I've given you this job is because of the authentic self you are. He said, when you try to be somebody else, you are never going to pass it because then you lose who you are.
Yeah.
And that's what I say to people I mentor now, people I coach now. I say
Mm.
the one thing you can be, which nobody else can be, is
It's
being
you.
you.
Exactly.
And let the system decide whether they want you or they don't want you. But
Mm.
don't try to be the answer to the system. There was a time, like, Michael, I went to two different jobs, interviews,
Yeah.
senior jobs. So I went to one this week and one was the week after. So the first one I went to, I thought I did really well.
Mm.
They took up, but maybe like 4 or 5 days before they got back to me. They got back to me and said, actually, you know what? We're three people. We struggled to find someone. We sorry that we didn't give you the job. I said, okay, can you just give me a bit more why? They said you had too much presence, that you were too present, you were too passionate.
Oh,
I
wow.
said, okay. So I'm trying to make sense about what does it mean to be too present and what does it mean to be too passionate about something. So they said, do you want more on the feedback? I was like, no, 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 no. I think what you've given me is enough. I can work with that. So I had another interview the week after that. And I thought, you know what, if this system is going to do this to me, there's no point. So I decided I wasn't going to go. But someone from their HR called me the day before and said, we're really excited to see you tomorrow. I wasn't going to
Okay.
go. I'm thinking, these people are excited to see me tomorrow and I'm not planning to go. So I had to get myself in. I said, okay, I'll go. I
Mm.
went there. Michael, they gave me on the same day
Mm.
exactly the same feedback. And they said at the end of that feedback, they said, that's what we are looking for in this
Oh,
organization.
wow.
They said you have got so much presence. You are so passionate. You've got so much energy. You are interested in what we're trying to do. And that's what's missing in this organization. And what I learned from that day is because I could have changed and become what that organization wouldn't give me a job wanted.
Mm.
And then I miss what this
Yeah.
organization who now give me a job is looking for. Because
Yeah.
just imagine now they've gone there and
And be
become more
miserable.
passive, whatever it is. And then they'll
Yep.
say, you know what, we're looking for someone who's passionate, someone who's got presence, someone who's got energy. I'm like, oh, you should have seen me last week. That's what I was last week.
Or you would just be miserable there. You'll just be
Yes.
completely miserable. And that
So
might actually be what they want, but that's not you.
that's not me. So
Yeah.
I've been liberated to be who I am. I show up. I think that's one thing I say in my
Yeah.
family. I said, one thing which we've got to do is
Mm.
to show up. Whatever happens after that, it doesn't really matter. It's not in our control.
Yeah.
We just always show up. We don't show up as just a black person. We show up as a person in that
Of a
space.
human being.
If that if
Absolutely.
that if that environment then defines us as black, that's not our problem.
Mm.
And that's how we show up. And but I'm proud to be a black person. I'm proud to be a black man. I'm proud about the blackness. I'm proud about what it brings. But actually, it's working to make sure that actually it doesn't give me an edge to be better than somebody else. It doesn't give me a limitation to be
It
less than
doesn't
someone
limit
else.
you.
It doesn't. It's just who I am. What should give me an edge is what is in my head. What should give me an edge is what's in my heart. What should give me an edge is how I create environment for people to belong. That's what should
Yeah.
give me an edge. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be because my skin is lighter or is darker than another skin.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this: those two jobs you mentioned, right? The first interview, rather, that you went for, and then the second one, and they gave the same feedback, except one was looking for exactly that, and the other thought wasn't. what was the makeup of the people who were seeing you there? Were they white in
Yes.
both organizations?
So it was funny one. So the first organization, the whole panel was white.
Okay.
Everyone on that panel. The
Okay.
second organization, there were six people on the panel, but there were senior roles. The second organization, there were six people on the panel, and there were two people who were black.
Ah, okay. All right. I ask you that not because automatically that means the first panel a panel of bad people. Definitely not.
No, no, they're
We
not
don't
bad. They're not
exactly.
bad.
We don't
Yeah,
think so. So, but certainly that's where representation comes in, isn't it?
it does. It
When
does.
there's representation, people are able to see different sides of things
Yeah.
because there is balancing. Because we're all just different and we see the different. And like I said, racialization has impacted all of us. Whether you're black, you're white, it has worked on our psyche and made us see things the way we should, and we're not naturally supposed to be seeing them. So it's impacted white people just as much as it's impacted black people in terms of our psyche. It's just that in terms of the actual impact of being capable of holding back, it's impacting black people and why we're telling these stories.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. What would you say you're still carrying from that experience? What is there any remnant of that weight and black realization that you feel is still today unresolved for you? Is there anything like that?
No, I think where I am now,
Hmm.
I think because my faith plays a very big role in me.
Okay.
I think I had to dig deeper into my faith and
Hmm.
starting to know who I am, because actually who I am in Christ and actually it's above the whole thing about rest. So actually I'm
Hmm.
in that space now, which I say is really rest cannot hold me back. Rest doesn't give me a step up. So actually even the remnants which were coming through that actually are gone, because what I want them to do is to be able to come into a space and create, because actually I'm in a position now, Michael, where in my own little world, I can create environment for others.
Yeah.
And that's what I always work for, is to say, actually, how do I create environments where people feel that they belong? So I'm
Hmm.
using everything I've got in social media, every platform, to create those environments, to be
Yeah.
able to really talk about. I'm not trying to reverse the psychology and say black people are better, because I
Hmm.
don't think anyone
Yeah.
is better.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nobody who's better. I'm just trying to come to a place which says black people, white people, male, female, uh, uh, people who are from the LGBT community, people who are from a different part, people, whatever we might be, we are all human beings.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. And if we can just find ourselves, because it's finding that common ground. The common ground is we are all created from the same place. We are all human beings. And actually, that is then being the one thing which has liberated me. That's one thing which I think I then look at, actually, how do I use that to liberate others?
Wow. Now that's really powerful. I think you've rounded it up very, very well for us as a way to close this conversation. Thank you very, very much, Wellington, for sitting with
No,
me.
no, no. I am really grateful for the opportunity. And I again say to people who are going to listen at this broadcast, this is not a representation of black people.
Hmm.
This is not a representation of black people who have moved to Britain and become British. This
Yeah,
is not a representation of that. This is just my story.
this is just your
So
story.
there might be something in my story which might be relevant to them. There might
Yeah.
be something in my story which they might listen and say, oh, what is this guy talking about?
Hmm.
It doesn't change my story.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Again, or with that clarification from Wellington, I would say to my listeners, as you sit with this story, Wellington's story, I would like to invite you again to think about this. Is there something, anything, perhaps completely unrelated to race, that you didn't used to account for, but which has suddenly or quietly started to shape how you are seen by others or how you're treated? And what, if anything, has that shifted for you?